Hi, nice to meet you. My name is Katherine. And we'll introduce ourselves in a second, I think, but let's get Kelly on up here, who's the big deal.
What?
Oh, test.
Test.
Let's try this one. Sorry, I apologize.
Oh, that's okay.
One more here on your chair. This sounds.
Thursdays.
You want to step over? Awesome.
Hey, everyone.
There we go. Okay. I'll introduce myself quickly and then give you guys some context as we are going to have the conversation with Kelly. I'm founder and CEO of Calia Flowers. We sell flowers. Who knows about our big blue boxes? Woo! Thank you. But before I did Calia, I was a marketer. I don't know if Kelly knows that. I was a marketer at Procter & Gamble, so Gillette and Shave Care and all those kinds of things. No pressure. But really excited to talk about marketing in context of startup and e-commerce versus some of like what the big guys do. And Kelly's seen that entire range from soup to nuts. And he'll tell us a little bit more about that and his background.
So my name is Kelly Ketchney. I started in digital media and advertising in 2004. I'm going to carbon date myself.
Yeah, just hold it up.
Okay, sorry, everybody can hear me now. I started in digital marketing in 2004, working with a Los Angeles-based agency called Vantage Media in Southern California. We had clients like University of Phoenix and eHarmony generating leads. We left Vantage Media and I started a local business here to apply some of that performance marketing knowledge to the Winnipeg market. And I teamed up in 2015 with my current business partner who was working at Vantage as well. And we created a company called Attribution. We currently employ a bunch of folks here in Winnipeg, one in Calgary, and we do a boutique agency services for clients in the US and Canada.
Okay. You have to keep talking because I'm doing up a button.
Okay. We service all kinds of clients from large online retailers to local shops that you drive by every day here in Winnipeg. And we focus on value creation as opposed to eyeballs and impressions. We like to measure what we get in terms of a return on an investment through a platform like Google or Meta or other things that allow you to acquire clicks to your website. People for your door.
Amazing. So one of the things that I know Kelly and Tribute have always been big into, and particularly in your time over the last few years, has been shifting from kind of creative and marketing as pretty ads and things that make people feel good into, man, this is a data conversation. Talk to us how you've seen that change happen over the last few years.
Yeah, when I started my journey into advertising, I was primarily in print, and I remember sitting around large boardroom tables for 2.5-hour conversations about whether or not we should be using a blue or a light blue in our marketing materials. And that quickly changed when I entered the digital space, when I found out we could have that as a hypothesis, put it through an experimentation process, get a mathematical result, and see which one won in terms of the best results for that value creation. And that's evolved from that simple premise into a complex array of different variables that you can test online now. And every question or every hypothesis you have in the digital realm is an opportunity to put that through an experimentation lens and understand it how in terms of the traffic you're acquiring or the value you're creating.
Okay, so let's double click on that because I think for a lot of you guys in the audience, you might be looking at, okay, how many of you are marketers actually? Let's go that way. How many are marketers? We got a couple. But let's do some kind of marketing 101 because I think it's really important, particularly in startups today, for everyone in an org to be aligned on what marketing metrics or data metrics are actually driving results.
Yeah.
So let's start at the very beginning. If you had to pick your kind of top 1, 2, maybe 3 things that, who's a dev? Dev, what's your name? Say it again? Daniel. That Daniel should be aware of as a dev in a company, and we'll go industry agnostic. What are some of those first data points that matter for Daniel to know about?
You're going to make me choose only a few.
Yes.
Okay.
101, not 201. That's next week.
101 is probably, we look at it in terms of cohorts. We try to break it apart into 3 tenets: acquisition, behavior, and outcome. So in acquisition, we're talking about the costs and the metrics around acquiring traffic to your site. Behavior, we're looking at human actions on the site. So are they adding things to cart? Are they engaging with forms? Are they doing the things that are going to lead to that value and that outcome? And the outcome is exactly whether it is, whether it's a monetary outcome, a lead that you've generated. Those are the sorts of things. So within those three, I'd say clicks in the acquisition for volume, click-through rate to understand engagement on that volume. In the behavior column, I'd say things like leading actions and conversion rates, and then in the outcome, the value or the return and the profitability of those actions.
So that's super interesting because I think when you talk about those three sections, that first piece on acquisition is largely a marketing function, right? Like that's ads and that's placement and that's like, can you get enough eyeballs that are relevant to what you're trying to sell? But as soon as you move into like on-platform behavior, into your, I forget where your second bucket was.
Behavior.
As soon as you move into behavior, like that's a dev function in terms of, hey, you got them to your landing page, or you got them to your product page, or you got them to your website or your app, but did they actually go through the process to make it happen? And one of the things that I think sometimes gets lost is it's like, well, it's marketing's job to deliver sales, but actually it's marketing's job to get some bums in the seats and to have really good insight into how they're functioning things. But there's actually way more to it than that. Tell me more, because you laughed.
Yeah, we hear that a lot. So it's marketing's job to get you the traffic and
The opera portion of the evening.
yeah. Is that any better? Okay. So marketing's job is to deliver the traffic to the site and get it there within the budget. And oftentimes, like you alluded to, that's when they walk away. And they say the site or the dev on the site has to take the hand from that person who's coming to the site and walk them through over the finish line. The problem with that, though, is you're not looking at the intent of the traffic or the quality of the traffic that you're delivering. You're only looking at delivering the traffic as the success metric, and that's completely the wrong way to look at it. You want to look at the source quality and the outcome, the behavior and the outcome quality of all of those individual traffic sources.
Yeah. So it's interesting. We're having this fight at Calia right now because our team is split largely along these three functions. And so my guy that's driving traffic, and I'll talk about our weddings program in particular, his leads are up 2x year on year. Same budget, twice as many customers coming and submitting quotes. They say, yes, I'm getting married and I want to know more. But our conversion rate from quote submitted to actually booked is down 50%. So despite the fact that he's driving twice as many leads, we're flat on revenue. And I literally sat in a meeting this morning where they're fighting because the marketing guy is going like, look, I'm getting you all these great leads and you losers can't convert it. And the customer guys are going, who manage the whole flow, et cetera, are saying, well, like these leads are garbage. Like I don't care you've got twice as many, but they're not actually interested. Like we're not actually getting through, and they're having this big battle. How do you navigate that?
You start by watching Glengarry Glen Ross. There's an excellent lesson in that movie about this topic specifically. The way that we navigate with that is trying to set expectations across teams. So we have a client, just recently we had this discussion where they said, look, we want a 200 lead per day volume, full stop. No problem, they've got deep wallets, they're willing to spend to get that, but they also want to maintain a conversion rate on those leads of 25%, give or take. So then the question, they bring it to us and we put it through our value lens and we look at it and we say, well, yeah, we can deliver 200 leads per day, no problem, but your conversion rate is going to go somewhere like sub 5%, if you're lucky. So we start to bring in the reasons for that and start to try to qualify them, the expectations that they're actually asking for, because they're asking for something in between, essentially, and making sure that those expectations are clear and set between all the teams within a client. It's hard, but it's valuable hard work.
And so we started there with your two buckets. We said, okay, leads is our first function, conversion rates our second function, and then your third was about retention and loyalty, which is all about lifetime value. Yep. Tell us more about that, because that plays in too.
Yeah, it's becoming, LTV or lifetime value is becoming more and more important today because platforms like Google and Meta are offering different options in the campaigns that you're setting up. So you can target specifically just net new customers to your business in Google. You can target win-back business in Google. And there's a whole bunch coming down the pipeline where you can target every type of customer that you can define in that funnel that you have. So what that means is it's giving everybody to compete at a higher level. And if you don't understand the total lifetime value of a newly acquired customer, you're going to be missing out on such a largely a new competitive space within those ad platforms.
So let's get nerdy and do math, because I think that's actually really interesting when we talk about those three. So, and I'll bring it back to a Calia example. You know, one of the things we've really looked at over the years is how much value do we get out of a flower customer? Because it's different than SaaS. And in SaaS, you can hit like, okay, $15 a month for an average of 24 months, and you can run your math pretty easily. In flowers, it's Valentine's Day, birthday, but then nobody died, and then they broke up, and you might see them 3 years from now, and the whole thing. And so we've done a lot of work on what is the customer lifetime value. Why is that customer lifetime value important when you're backing out that very first step of leads and acquisition? And let's say my customer lifetime value is $500.
Yeah.
How much should I be spending on my leads?
So that's a great question. I'm gonna stumble on an answer here because we operate in profitability. So I need to ask you a bunch of questions about your margin. Yeah, but if $500 is an LTV, then what you want to do, what we would do at least, is we would talk to you about how much it costs right now to get a new customer across the finish line, and then how much you're comfortable with adding to it. And we don't make large bets. We make a bunch of small bets and see what pay off through data analysis. That's one of the strengths of what we do and how we approach digital marketing. So what we would want to do is take that $500 lifetime value and start shaving off a little bit of value to see how the CAC changes over time and how much more you want to invest, and honestly to see if we can increase that $500 to $600 or $700 or $1,000.
Yeah, so let's do one definition. I'm going to call you on the acronym CAC. What's CAC?
Customer acquisition cost.
Yeah. So I'm going to bring it back to a Calia example because this is interesting, and I know you can't share tons about your clients because of all sorts of privacy stuff. So our $500 LTV is true, but one of the things we've really struggled with is exactly that margin and profitability conversation, because if you're only making 20 points on $500, stay with me, you're only making $100 in margin on that customer. And so the maximum amount that you should pay to acquire that customer is $100, right? Now let's say my conversion rate on my website is 10%.
Oh.
Well, let's say, right? It could be, maybe, okay. But if it's 10% and I say I can't spend more than $100 on a customer, how much can I afford to pay per lead?
Yeah.
Kelly?
Yeah, $10.
Yeah, which is great. But $10 is actually really hard. It's hard to acquire leads for $10 in this space.
It is, because the first thing as a general marketer would do is go to where the lower quality is, where there's less competition, and just back to your example, get that volume across the table.
And then so it's been really interesting as a marketer, and I'm going to go back to kind of what we were just talking about in terms of all the levers that you have to pull. Because yes, you can try and get your $10 or lead cost down. You can go from 10 to 5 to 2 to 1 and maybe get really terrible quality. But what are the other things? I'm going to ask the audience, what are the other things that you can do to help your marketing pay back in my example?
Show of hands.
Kelly, what do you think?
Yeah, we approach paid, organic, direct, referral, email, all of these channels. We like to look at them as a horse race. So we put a bunch of traffic against all of them. We invest in them. And what we want to see is usually 3 to 4 of those channels creating a competition for you to see who can produce the best efficiency and conversion, the most profitability, the most revenue, in that order. And constantly be looking to improve or trying to help the lagging ones compete with the top ones. It's an experimentation framework. Devs should be familiar with that, right? So we try to look at it in terms of always looking at through the lens of that horse race to make sure that there's not, you're diversifying your risk. There's not one channel that's producing an outsized amount of volume and then a Google algorithm changes and your business tanks. It's best to do it that way.
Yeah. Okay, so that's one option. Say, screw it to paid. I'm going to go acquire customers for free. What other things could you do as part of that equation that we just talked about? The lead cost, the conversion cost, the lifetime value, the profit. Retention. What do you think, Kelly?
Love retention. Yeah. Retention is done through a number of different touch points. So one of the One of the more recent things we've been doing with our paid media clients is we are trying to align campaign types in Google Meta to where the person is in the funnel. And oftentimes you think of a funnel as top of funnel, mid funnel. So top of funnel is they don't know where to buy flowers from, but they're looking for flowers. Mid funnel is they've heard of the brand before, but they need to be reminded or pushed down to that purchase level. And purchase level is I have a relationship with this brand, typically, not all the time, and I know I'm going to go get my mom's birthday flowers, in part because you sent me a reminder email. Thank you for that. The funnel goes beyond that, though. It goes down past that purchase into the retention space so that when you're trying to retain customers, you're giving them reminders that you exist and you're introducing them to new products and services that they may have not engaged with you before on. And it comes down to, in an email example, probably the easiest one is just a welcome series, Flow, which I'm sure you guys employ well. Yeah. So introducing the customer through a series of emails, keeping them engaged, and knowing when to touch back and get them in those positions that they're exposed to paid ads. Win back is one of those ways that we define those clients. And again, we can target that within a lot of the paid media platforms today. We also encourage our clients to create your own customer segments through definitions and data that you own so that we can start to apply different marketing metrics and goals to each of those segments so that we know we want to pay more for a new customer as opposed to we want to pay a little bit less for somebody who's brand friendly.
Cool. So there's a whole theme there and a takeaway around stages of marketing and also the things that everyone, I'll fill in a couple of the other blanks here. So we talked about organic marketing as being a lever you can pull. We talked about retention as being another lever you can pull. But for our devs, right, we could work on conversion. Is the website helping to convert? For our customer service and operations folks, we could work on retention and how long are they staying? For our actually same people, how much are they spending, right? Like how are you driving your order value? And for our finance crew or our supply chain crew or our like pick a function, you can work on driving that profit because all of those things help back your marketers at that first function to be able to acquire leads more effectively.
I have a question for you.
Please.
How do you affect conversion rate?
Oh, lots of things. Putting me on the spot. I think, so in our world, I run two streams of business. So we run a wedding stream, which is more sales focused. And so it's a lot of email back and forth. And then we run a B2C stream, so a consumer stream, which is your traditional e-commerce. And so the obvious answer to either of those is make the customer journey more effective as you go through. So reduce friction. So take out any of the points where they might have a question, but it wasn't answered, or they're dropping off because they didn't know what to do next, or whatever, like hold their hand through the funnel. And that's the strategic part of it, but I bet you've got tactics.
Yeah, well, to try to make it more relevant for the devs out there, experimentation would be one of the first answers I'd give because everybody at the table will have a different opinion. You're going to get your team around you, and it's going to be marketing to sales to ownership to everybody, and they're going to say, I think if we did X, we would get a Y conversion. That's a hypothesis, and what you need is a practice or a framework to drop that hypothesis into and convert it to an actual outcome. And experimentation is the answer. So the way this weaves back for devs is oftentimes when we're working with site owners and devs who have created the site is there's some friction in some cases where devs worked hard to put this site up and they're opposed to change. If we saw a dev team, and we have in the past, that embraces experimentation, those are typically the sites that we get that just flourish naturally and a lot more smoothly.
Yeah. One of the things we got into years ago, and we've gotten away from it, Kelly, but we had a marketing person with us who was really big on marketing experimentation sprints. And so we worked in a 2-week sprint cycle, just like the devs did, on here's the experiment, here's the result. Here's the experiment, here's the result. And we'd have 2 or 3 experiments, everything from ad type to landing page content to follow-up sequence to whatever, email flow, whatever. And we'd run in these 2-week sprints, like very disciplined on hypothesis, test, outcome. Hypothesis, test, outcome. Tell us an example of one of your clients that has done that kind of hypothesis, test, outcome successfully.
There's been a number of clients that have done that, but I think one that comes to mind is they're down in the U.S. and they do a lot of heavy truck parts sales. And the hypothesis, there was a number of hypotheses around the table, and one of the ones that they came out to was let's try to inform our consumer with how much we think shipping rates would be on the PDP or the product description page. And everybody thought that was a great idea. They put it on the site, they didn't run it through an experimentation process, and the conversion rate just went down, completely down, because people got cold feet before they even had a chance to add the product to the cart. We asked them to put it through an experimentation, even though the data was kind of clear, put it through an experimentation process, and it was dead-eyed clear that that was hindering their add to cart rate. Since they've taken it off, we've seen add to cart rates go back up just recently, and things are starting to turn around. But again, a good example of that experimentation process.
We did one recently, and it's interesting to see the difference between what your gut thinks versus the actual data. So if you've ordered from Calia, you'll see you buy flowers, and then we used to have, actually I think we still have because we went back, a separate page, like a whole separate page that made you choose your vases, your chocolate, like all the extra stuff, right? And why do we try and push all that stuff? Because we're trying to drive average order value, and average order value drives lifetime value, which gives our marketers more money to work with at the top of the funnel. And the hypothesis was that every click on our site reduces conversion rate. So, which I think is a pretty widely held philosophy. And so we said, look, it's 7 pages to go through to get a bouquet right now. Let's kill the add-ons page, integrate it with the bouquet page, and we'll get a 10% increase in conversion or whatever it is, right? I don't know what the number is supposed to be. And so we did. And so we had this beautiful mock-up, got this gorgeous website, the devs made it, took them forever, like a beautiful slider and this whole thing. We launched this page. Now the vases are on the product page, and conversion rate went up. Very exciting. We went from, 8% to 9% or whatever it was. But we rolled it back. And why did we roll it back? Does anybody have an idea? Because the percentage, go ahead. Order value went down. When you didn't force people to look at the vases on a separate page, they just skipped right past it. And so instead of getting an average of, $5 an order for a vase, we suddenly got an average of like $1 per order on a vase because everyone just skipped it. And so it didn't matter that our conversion rate went from 8 to 9%. Our overall AOV and LTV was tanking because the AOV of that space went down.
Yeah, and I think it's important to make another touch point on the experimentation data and the value you get from it as business owner or dev or site owner is, as you start to increase your investment to your site by buying paid media traffic from the Googles and the Metas of the world, you're buying data. You're buying data from them, and why wouldn't you want to put it through this lens of learning so that you have this library that you can fall back on and say, well, a year ago we did this test and this was the result because we were buying this data. If you're not putting that paid traffic through the experimentation lens, you're missing a piece of value from that paid traffic.
That's super cool. So let's bring it back to kind of early days. How many of you guys are in a startup that has fewer than 5 people? Or have got a side hustle with fewer than 5 people? Few of you? Yeah, cool. So let's go back to those early days where you're sitting looking at your bank account and you're going like, maybe I should spend some money on marketing. Should we do it? Should we not, Kelly? And if we do, how should we do it?
It's a great question. So oftentimes we work with all sizes of clients from, $1 million or more month in ad spend to $500 a month in ad spend to, like I said, the businesses that you might be driving by here in Winnipeg. When we were working with somebody who is just starting out and wants to get their foot into that water of digital marketing, oftentimes the human instinct is to, let's just jump in. Let's make the biggest splash we can, to hell with my bank account. And that's risky. So what we try to advise on is making a bunch of small bets to understand the data and then follow that data. So instead of investing, and this is something we say a lot internally, is don't spend $5,000 until you spend $500 and understand the data.
Write that down. That's a good quote. Don't spend, Neil, that's for your summary. Don't spend $5,000 until you spend $500. Tell us more.
Yeah, and when you spend that $500, understand the value of that implicitly. And another litmus test and another thing that we do when we're interviewing new clients is this question. So if we were to spend $500, and let's assume you had your acquisition behavior and outcome, it was all tight and everything was as expected. If you gave me $1 and I gave you $10 back, That's return on ad spend, ROAS. If you did that, when would you stop giving me $1? That's a legit question.
Never.
That's the right answer. Yeah. So those are the kind of people that we enjoy working with. And the small startups and the small business owners, if we can help educate them on that so that they're defending their investment and they're getting value from it, and we're there to help them navigate that, that's our ideal situation, and that's their ideal situation to preserve their money.
Yeah. I think that point about scaling up into infinite is so important, but I also recently, and we were talking a bit about this before we started, I've also recently started nerding out about incremental cost of acquisition, because I think that's something that gets lost a lot. Because the question of like, if I gave you $1 more, would you give me 10 back, is actually different than I gave you $100 and you gave me 10 clients. Yeah. Right? And so to translate that, one of the things that we started looking at was we looked at our wedding business and we looked at how we were acquiring customers for like $100 a piece or whatever. No, it's less than that, $30 a piece, whatever. We're like, great. Like we're making, I don't know, average $250 in margin on a wedding order. So if my CAC is $30, like let's go, infinite amount of ad spend. And so we started really pumping budgets and we were sort of seeing improvements, but we also started to see that number creep up a lot. It started to go from 35 to 40 to 45 to 50 to 60 to 70 to 80 to 90. And then we decided to do a test and shut off some of that top spend. And when we maxed it out, those top customers were actually costing us like $500 a piece, because there was a whole ton of customers that you could get for like less than maybe 100. And then after that, the saturation was just ridiculous. You had reached all the brides, there weren't any more, and now you're spending a stupid amount per customer. Now that took us probably a year to find out, which is a scary thing when we do it internally. But I imagine you've had stories like that where you've worked with customers and uncovered some data that was totally different than what they thought was happening. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so there's in the example that I gave where it's if you give me $1 and I give you 10 back, when would you stop? We have a tribute phrase for that. It's called Tango Unlimited. You just want to dance and dance and dance. But to your point, there is a diminishing return on that in some cases. So when we're in that position and we realize that there's saturation or competition has left the marketplace and we're able to dominate it, we start to look up the funnel in those places and we start to say, well, are there people waiting on deck in the mid funnel that we could push down, or are there people that we need to make a larger investment on to get down from top funnel to mid funnel to purchase? The issue with that, and you keyed in on it really well, is there's a cost to that funnel movement, and you have to understand that cost implicitly. Otherwise, you're spending and you're going to get that result of, oh my God, it costs us, there's not any brides left in the market. Yeah. So what we're doing with our clients is we're aligning our campaign types to the funnel position that they want to spend to. We are low funnel start. We start at the low funnel for all of our clients. We establish that foundation of the value and the return and the profitability. I'm going to come back to profitability because that's a key part to your question. And then we build them up to go into mid-funnel, but not until we understand the dotted lines of the economics that when you invest $10,000 in mid-funnel, you should expect maybe a 2 or a 3 return on that ad spend as opposed to a 10.
So there's a whole second theme here around experimentation. And I think maybe who's surprised that Kelly's so much of a numbers nerd as a marketer? Like when you think marketers, you're like, oh, pretty, right? And here's Kelly, who like probably should be a CFO, right? You should have a finance degree and be going in that direction. Well, but it's actually really interesting. And in this day and age, that the level of experimentation is actually, marketers are a lot more like scientists than they are artsy-fartsy, right?
Yeah, and I came from an artsy-fartsy background. I appreciate that, no shade, but the math is just confidence inspiring. And again, like the traditional media I came from and the jump to digital, that's what got me looking at it like my first sunrise was, oh my God, you can be accountable to something. You can't guess that it's blue versus light blue, like I mentioned. You can say, this worked. It's math that's telling you it worked. Why wouldn't you want to do more of that, especially when you're investing potentially, thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars in order to grow a business?
So let's hit this one more time because it's actually an interesting question in this context around if I could give you $10 for every dollar, how much would you give me? Or if you could give me $10 for every dollar I gave you, how much would I give you? Yeah. And you asked me, well, how much would I give you? You're looking for Tango Unlimited. There's a reality in startup and for many of the companies that you guys might work for, which is as much as I might like to give you unlimited dollars, I might only have, a couple grand in my bank account. So in a world of raising money, which is the reality for a lot of startups, how can you coach them on being able to have the metrics to confidently say, so it's not just that you sold me, that if I give you $1, you'll give me 10, but what metrics do I use back to an investor around marketing that can justify, we should be doing infinite amounts of marketing or meaningfully more than we are?
Well, I love that question because in the example I gave you, that $10 back, that represents a gross dollar amount. So that's not net of costs or anything like COGS or anything like that. I don't want to go too financial, but we're working with our clients now, and we had a client that was a catalyst for this where they got a $50 million investment and they blew through that $50 million investment because they were watching top line revenue and not profit in that revenue. And that was an aha moment for them, especially, but it was the whole way through that we were advocating and trying to coach them on profitability. And it's hard to get a seat at the table as a boutique agency with a large American client, but it's less we were right, they were wrong. It's more, let's use this as a takeaway. They're still with us today and they've adjusted the way that they do business, and they have not just adjusted, they've run into that fire and said, we want ROAS that's top level measurement, so return on ad spend that's top level. We want ROAS that's gross profit and net profit calculated so that they have eyes on this, because you lose $50 million once and you don't do it again.
Yeah. It's so dangerous. And I think I sit here being like, oh yeah, you losers. But like, honestly, we went through similar. And I think one of the things that's also interesting that I'd like your perspective on is what got you here doesn't get you there. And I remember in the early days when, we were acquiring customers for Calia for like $7 on Facebook. And I was like, oh my God, $7 acquisition cost. This was like 2018. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go to my investors. I'm going to raise a bunch of money and we're going to start to spend a ton of money on advertising. And then every dollar I spent just drove up that number over and over and over again. It's like my wedding example again. And it wasn't working. And what had worked at $1,000 spend wasn't working at a $10,000 spend. So you must have seen that with some of your clients. Talk us through that as an early startup in terms of do you have infinite scalability, or are there actually some phases in startups?
Yeah, there's absolutely phases in startups, and Tango Unlimited is the aspirational goal. It's not necessarily the goal on square one on the game board. You have to respect how we deal in value creation, and value creation means defending profit first. We want to make sure that your bank account is defended, your investors' interests are defended, and that we're producing net value for your business in every marketing investment you do. So that's looking at it as a stepped approach to Tango Unlimited is probably the most sage way to do so, and that's really how we advocate these things.
Yeah, it's huge. So let's hate on agencies for a second. So so talk to me about that though, because I think I get served Facebook ads on the daily from agencies where it's like, we turn e-commerce businesses from $1,000 a month into $1 million a month. Like, sign up today. There's so much out there. So, what advice do you have for startups or business leaders that are trying to choose agency or not agency partners? You touched on a lot of it, but tell us more.
Yeah, so traditional agencies will work to a success metric. So, a success metric being, if you engage with us, what do you want out of it? You're going to spend $1 million with us. What do you want from that $1 million? And even if they ask that question, they usually don't. They'll hear, we want you to spend $1 million. That's the success metric. Have you spent the budget? Because if you don't spend the whole budget, I can't ask for the budget again next year. We've heard that a million. Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. What we focus on is what is the value that $1 million is created. That's the differentiator with us. And it's important to note, especially for startups and people who are just coming into this space, is typically agencies will work on strictly a percent to spend basis. And percent to spend means if you're spending If you're spending $100,000, we're going to charge you 5% of your spend, and that's going to increase with the rate that you spend. So it's in it for the agency to get you to spend more. We don't operate like that. And we feel that that provides the wrong motivation for someone in our position to be focused on value, focused on helping these startups and business owners grow their business.
Helpful. We've talked a lot about data. We've talked a lot about understanding your metrics. Tell me about, and we always like failure stories in startup. Tell me about a dumpster fire that you guys have either executed or walked into where the gap between what they thought was going on versus what was actually going on, or what you thought was going to happen versus what actually happened, was way out to lunch.
I think I've purged a lot of those memories. The $50 million one is definitely somewhere around the top of the leaderboard for us. There's been other ones, and what it really distills to, like, I feel bad calling out any particular client example, but what it really, failure or dumpster fire really distills down to is someone not having the expectations defined for the investment that they're going to make. And expectations could mean a lot of things. It could mean what the profit was, what the top line revenue was, what the conversion rate was. You have to look at it in those three segments that I talked about holistically to understand what the expectation is from the client. There are some clients that come to us and say, our success metric is you spend this $1 million budget. And we tilt our heads and we say, are you sure? And they say, yes, absolutely. We get extra confirmation on that, but that is their success metric.
Yeah, which is so scary. And I think, yeah, I think we'll leave that there on agencies. AI. I also get served a lot of ads for, you don't need a marketing team, AI can do it for you. What is your advice for people, especially in early stages, thinking about marketing tools and AI tools? How are you seeing that landscape changing?
Have you ever asked ChatGPT anything and have it said, no, I can't do that for you? No. The answer is no. If you have examples, please show me after this. You have to use AI and have a certain amount of contempt for AI, and you have to understand where AI will provide you efficiencies in your business. That's usually our consultation. Now, AI is there's so many different lenses we could look at AI through in terms of marketing. From the platforms like Google and Meta, they are rushing past the finish line to try to get as many AI enhancements and AI changes into those platforms so that you don't have to worry about rewriting ad copy. It'll rewrite it for you and start testing it. We use it every day in what we do, but we don't use it in terms of definitive guidelines, advice, or data. We use it to bounce ideas off of and have I use it personally. I use it for conversational things. I can't sleep at 12:30 at night and I have an e-commerce problem. I might ask it a question, but I'm not giving our clients or giving myself the ability to take its answer. It's just for discovery and thought, really.
Super interesting. What are your thoughts on AI created content? Are you guys driving in that space?
Yeah, we are. I mean, so Google has this, it's a tool called Google Merchant Center, and Google Merchant Center allows you to upload a product feed of all your products you're selling and then sell them in those little shopping tiles you've seen 1,000 times. They have something that they've introduced that really leans into AI called the Product Studio. So we were just talking with Google today and they said there's this new feature coming. So if you have a woman's dress, you can ask the Google AI and Product Studio to change the woman's dress background to have a bunch of fall leaves and pumpkin spice lattes in behind it. And you can change it seasonally like that. That's an interesting use. Again, I would wrap this in an experimentation practice and try to understand what this is actually doing for your business as you devote time to it. But we do see a really fast evolution in terms of the ad platforms and AI is available.
Super helpful. Time check, because my phone fell. 20 minutes. Okay. So let's talk through marketing versus sales functions, because I think that's an interesting conversation. How many of you work in consumer-based businesses? So you sell directly to an end user, like flowers? And how many of you sell software or sell to businesses, like SaaS, B2B, that space? Does that mean everyone else is unemployed? Okay. Cool. Yeah. So one of the questions that we've talked about a lot in different functions, and actually I'm going to bring it back to Calia because I think interesting examples are helpful. We run a B2B stream where we try and sell to mortgage brokers, real estate agents. I don't know how to get rid of that. And we've talked a lot about whether that should be a sales function, i.e. some poor sucker, probably me, picking up the phone and trying to call and say, hey, Jim, real estate broker, please send your clients flowers. Versus if it should be a marketing function, which is buy a whole bunch of ads on LinkedIn or Facebook or pick a category and try and make it a marketing function. How should businesses think about marketing strategy versus direct sales strategy, and which works at different stages?
That is a great question. Oftentimes when you hear the words B2B, every marketer in the room will say, oh, I've got LinkedIn. I've got LinkedIn in my corner. It doesn't always work. And to your point, there is no replacing contacting somebody directly that you know is going to be a valuable client or customer, whether it's the business exactly that you're pursuing, an association that is a conglomerate of those businesses. I would probably choose to invest the human resource first and then add a layer of digital on there as top of funnel reminders, targeting where that person is or who they are, so that you could get in there with YouTube impressions, for instance, that might be inexpensive as a gentle reminder to a conversation that you had with a human.
You know, I think it's so interesting as part of and I'm going to ask you the nerdy, like, how many touch points do you need to convert a customer? But if I think about early Calia, like, you know, we were a marketing company and now we're a marketing company, but those early days, like I was sitting at farmers markets and doing direct sales, right? Like, yeah. And I might have kidded myself that they were converting because they also saw a Facebook ad, but the reality was is they were converting because they saw me at the farmers market. And like, I think it's another example of how strategies change at different phases of your business, but also that like the answer is probably a bit of both.
Yep.
So let's nerd back on attribution between you know, actually I'll go first question. How many touch points do we need, Kelly, to convert a customer?
As many as you need. Yeah, right. So there's this old Google adage where they draw the customer journey, and everybody thinks of the customer journey as, oh, they saw our YouTube video and they were just blown away by our brand, and then they saw a different mid-level demand gen kind of campaign, and they were reassured that our brand was trustworthy, and then they saw a product and they clicked on that product and they purchased that product. It doesn't work like that. The Google's old adage of the customer journey is it starts here and it does this, and it ends here on the sale. And that squiggle it would work better if I had a whiteboard, but that squiggle is all kinds of those touch points that you're talking about. And an honest answer is it does depend, but you have to measure it. I think it's the right answer. If you don't measure it and you don't know, then you don't know where you're starting from, where your baseline is, and when you've had success or when you're failing.
I think that's great. No, it is. I think the answer is also like this weird contrast between like we've just pumped Kelly up as this amazing data scientist that's sitting here running experiments like a mad scientist in a lab. And then he also on the flip side was also like, yeah, but like maybe there's a whole bunch of other things too, right? Like I think there's this crazy combination of both that you have to navigate. And how do you walk your clients through that?
We start with what does success look like for you? That's the first question we open with a new prospect or a new client, because again, we want to understand those expectations. And yeah, there are blurred lines. It's not all math, it's not all creative, and you really have to roll with the punches with different clients. We have a client locally here in town, a jeweler, who we don't spend very much for per month on online promotions, but every time I walk into that shop, she almost hugs me and says, thank you, we got 10 customers from Google because of what you guys are doing. That's a feeling. Like, I don't have data to attribute that back to, but I do know when we stop spending, she's less likely to run up and want to hug me. She's more likely to run up and ask me what the hell's going on. So
one of the other things that I think is a classic debate, and this is more marketing nerdy, but I think there's often this debate on, do you spend on brand? Do you spend on top funnel awareness, so the billboards and the whatever that you can't actually attribute sales to, versus do you just spend on the right here, right now, make them buy the thing? What are your thoughts on that?
I love the brand conversation because in the past life, when we worked for the SoCal-based agency, we were so focused on things like brand defense and preserving brand value. When you're talking about brands like University of Phoenix or eHarmony, there is an inherent amount of brand value that you have to defend, and it's the equivalent of picking up $100 bills off the floor on because it's easy. People know the brand, they want to make the transaction. I'll answer it in two phases. So on the paid media side, there is always a case to be made to separate brand from non-brand in your advertising. Brand is going to come at a higher conversion rate, a higher ROAS, a higher return, a higher conversion rate. Non-brand is going to come at something a lot less than the brand typically. And you guys, as like a well-known brand right now, I hope that's structured, and that's probably what you see today. While you're starting out, you're not going to have that brand awareness to lean into. I would still try to respect, there's brands that we're working with now that we've worked with for years that are just starting to see themselves creep into that, oh, like we really need to pay more attention and be brand defense focused to keep our competitors at bay. That differentiation will make a big difference in how you're reviewing the success of your paid media ads. To come back to the traditional media has its place. Because that was a prior life for me, I don't want to throw shade on that, but it has its place with controlled budgets, I think is the best way to say it, especially if you're just starting out. Don't make those large bets that we talked about like we talked about with digital media. Make small bets, make controlled bets, make one at a time bets so that you can try to measure it. And if there's a way to measure it via QR code or whatever you want to do, try it.
Yeah. Okay, so we've had some big themes.
Yeah.
First big theme was, think about marketing as 3 phases. So first phase was?
Acquisition.
Second phase was?
Behavior.
Third phase was?
Outcome.
Oh, that was good. So leads, conversion, and lifetime value. Second big theme was about experimentation.
Yes.
Tell us more.
Have an experimentation practice. Have a means to convert a hypothesis, or probably more commonly an opinion from a hippo or somebody who's higher up in the organization, to reality. So you want to take an opinion and convert it to something mathematical to prove them right and prove them wrong. We've had, this is a good example. We had one client here in Winnipeg that I preached the experimentation practice with so hard that they implemented it, but they implemented it, I didn't mean for them to implement it this way, but it's a good accountability measure where they set up a giant whiteboard and it was, I have an opinion and I want you guys to test this in this new experimentation practice, and here's $5. I'm going to make a bet that my opinion increases conversion rate or increases ROAS or increases sales. We had an uncontrollable betting board and gambling culture that have developed in this client because of experimentation. I'm not advocating for that, but it did help. It did help.
That's huge. So data being king. And then our third big theme was about, yes, there's data, but there's also 1,000 factors. And you've got to think about, how do we balance AI with humans, with brand, with performance, with like all these other pieces that turn the marketing from science into art.
Yeah, be skeptical with your data. Ask yourself why the data goes one way, and if it's being influenced by other sets of data. Be really skeptical with AI. Don't believe it. Don't trust it until you've asked it 1,000 times. Use it. Don't run away from it.
Okay, guys at the back, this is going to be the most important takeaway. I'm looking at you, gray shirt at the bar. Who's ignoring me? Many of you, not marketers, you're going to walk into work tomorrow or into an interview tomorrow, and you're going to ask one question, or maybe a question with some context, to your marketing leader that is going to help you do your job better. What are some of those questions, Kelly, that a dev can ask a marketing leader, or an ops person can ask a marketing leader, bringing back to our metrics on X, that can help everyone deliver marketing performance for the company?
Establish the expectation. Ask what success looks like. What is success? And then ask the follow-up questions about those metrics that relate to success. What is our current CAC? What's our new customer CAC? What's existing customer CAC? What is our ROAS, return on ad spend? Do we measure profitability? Do we have an experimentation practice? Maybe don't ask all those questions at once. You'll look crazy, but tier them off across the week, and you'll be asking some valuable questions to that person and get them thinking critically about it. That would probably be my best advice.
I love that. Daniel, you got that? We're ready. Okay. Questions from the audience. We need at least 3. When you do a question, I would like you to tell us who you are and what you do. Yes.
I'm Chitra. I'm the Director of Marketing for Attribution. So I'm hosting tonight.
Woohoo!
Thank you, Katherine, and thank you, Kelly. My question for you, Katherine, is you've got 2 streams, B2B and B2C. What was transformational when it came to scalability on the B2B side?
I'll tell you when we figure it out. So Chitra's question was, I have a B2C, so direct to consumer, and a B2B, selling to businesses function. And she said, what was transformational for scaling the business to business side? My answer was, I will tell you when we figure it out, because the answer is we haven't. We continue to struggle on a traditional marketing or digital marketing function that gets us leads that pay out. And the same story on the sales side. You can spend, 100 hours trying to track down real estate agents, and if you close one of them and they give you $500, you are completely underwater. And so it's the same question that we just talked about, what Kelly was pushing on, how much are you spending to acquire a customer versus how much are you making on the back end? That business model is broken. We are not tangoing for Calia. We are not tangoing in that business, because if I give you $1, you're going to give me 50 cents. And I don't want it. So it's a good question. And yeah.
The B2B side, we often advocate that our clients go to associations that represent real estate agents, so that you're not hitting just one off, you're hitting a group of them, and your payback might be 10 instead of 1, hopefully. Yeah. Might be 2, but
in theory, but then you have to go to lunches. Yes. Okay, question number 2. I will start calling on you. So yes.
Hi, Patrick. I'm a dev student, but I also have side hustle.
Awesome.
When it comes to your, you said something about experimentation frameworks. If I want to start doing that, starting out with side hustle or anything with that sort, how do I do that the most cost-effective way without, living out and learn time and money, so that I can see how things are like and then act on it?
I'll repeat it first.
yeah. So the question was, as someone who's just starting out as a dev, how do you get an experimentation framework that's cost effective so that you can start that process and practice? Keep me honest. Yeah, okay. The best way is probably to look for a platform. Don't start at the top. Don't start with like the Optimizely's or the AB Tasties or anything like that. Look for some of those. There's a freemium plan to the program, and start there. You don't need the Cadillac to start driving. You just need something that's going to do something reliably in an AB or a multivariant position or both. And it also depends on the framework that your side hustle set up in. Like Shopify is a lot easier than it is if you're homebrewing something. But again, no shade at the homebrew guys here, because we have a lot of those clients as well.
I'm actually going to push on this for one more thing. Your top, we'll go 3. Top 3 tools that people should write down and go Google and sign up for a free trial on.
Wow, that's put me on the spot. Yeah, yeah. We've got our own products that Chitra's shouting out here on, but yeah, you can talk to her after this about those.
You get one of those and then 2 others.
No. I'll do 3. So pick an AI that you're comfortable with. That's probably one of the best tools you can have in your corner as someone who's just starting or a business owner. Look at a lot of the questions we get today are around how do I get AI crawlers to ingest the site. Look at getting familiar and friendly with structured data on your site, and look at how that structured data can be implemented, because that is a track in addition to SEO that you could be implementing on your site with some simple code work. Again, that one's for the devs.
Did you get that? Double your business's business by figuring out how to make your site crawlable for AI.
Yeah, so the way those 2 work is get AI to write the FAQ and QA questions on your product page, wrap structured data around that, and you've got a winning combination and recipe. You know what? The third would be go out to events like this and talk to humans. Get out and touch grass on things like this so that you're able to not just have screen time to bounce opinions off of and get sycophantic answers back from AI.
Okay, third question. Yeah. Oh, you really wanted one down there. We'll go to fourth. Okay, you're next. Go ahead.
So apparently all of us are unemployed.
You have to introduce yourself first.
I'm sorry, Paul. I'm a student at Red River. So I see a lot of like parallels between how customer acquisition works and also like HR employee acquisition works. I was curious about if you have experience working with companies trying to like apply the same models or techniques that you use for marketing in the space where you're trying to retain high quality talent or talent acquisition. Do you see, like, have you experienced with those kind of clients, or what do you see in terms of like what techniques would follow, like what techniques would cross over, what would be different between those two industries?
Sorry, just to clarify the question. So in the talent acquisition space,
Yes.
how would we apply marketing principles to that? That's a good question. So it's probably, again, and this is less marketing, but it goes back to setting expectations and what does success look like. Those principles will guide you in terms of what kind of practices you're going to want to put in, whether they mirror marketing or not, but understanding what kind of retention rate you want with that talent and what you're going to do around those things. There's a lot. I'm thinking less marketing and more, more just human happiness kind of events on that kind of. That's not a great answer, but if you have a follow-up, I'm happy to answer it.
You look so familiar. Yeah. Where do you work?
But my question is just personal curiosity about like social media marketing and like if you had a preferred platform you like to use and why it's not.
Social media marketing, again, like I'm trying to keep a poker face. The level of contempt goes up a little bit. Sorry for all those who use it. We're finding that social media marketing is a great top of funnel and mid funnel program to run. And when we run things that are low funnel in Google across those channels, so omni-channel, we do start to see some benefits from running meta campaigns with a controlled budget that your Google campaigns can capture that purchase intent or that conversion intent you're looking for. So with any kind of meta or social media investment, the reason I think it's fair if you just say like, why do you have so much contempt for meta or social media? The reason is that when they report their results to you in their platforms, they overreach. So if you see something, if I saw an ad for flowers on Facebook, they would say that person saw the ad, I've got the pixel on the site. Now when they go to buy and they've gone in organically to your site, Meta will take credit for that and it'll put it in and it'll calculate it and factor it into your ROAS and your return. And that gives you a false signal of success. And that's where the contempt comes from, because we deal in money in the bank.
So there's actually a follow on this that I think is really important because it's tactical and it comes back to Patrick's question. We experienced this at Calia. So we actually spend a lot in Facebook and in Meta on the wedding business in particular because a lot of brides are scrolling, right? And we looked at what's the difference between what Meta is telling us for on-platform conversion. So what are they claiming that they're getting? Versus we added attribution question to you submitted a quote, where did you hear about us? Just tell us one thing. And then we checked between the two. The actual attribution that we were seeing was a third what we were seeing that Facebook was claiming. And it's pretty tight on that. Like people are happy to do it when they're submitting a form anyways. Like I feel pretty confident on it. And maybe there's some where it's like it was a secondary touch point. So call it half, but half. And so I think that's a really interesting point around, we say data is king, but whose data are you trusting and how do you make sure that you're actually controlling back for the data that is true for you and your business, not just what someone's trying to sell you? Yeah.
Just be cautious with your budget allocations. Again, the rule of don't spend 5,000 until you spend 500 and know how it behaves applies.
Okay, we are literally getting pulled off the stage. Thank you, Kelly. That was amazing. The master of data and marketing. He's here for free consultations all night. And thanks for coming to Tech Thursday. Thank you to our MC and hope you guys have a great night.